The following program is presented by the Metropolitan Library Service Agency.
Hello, welcome to All About Kids, a program focusing on the interests of children and young people and some of the issues affecting them. Our guest today, Hennepin County Commissioner John Derus, will be interviewed by Robert Rohlf, Director of the Hennepin County Library. They'll talk about programs directed toward children in Hennepin County, particularly child abuse and children's mental health.
As society grows more complex and lives closer together, according to many sociologists, it also separates society more and more into the upper and the lower classes. And children are often the victim of the changes in our old family social structures as this happened. When society fails, the county often becomes the government unit that must deal with the social fallout. Today we welcome Hennepin County Commissioner John Derus. Commissioner Derus has served on the Hennepin County Board now for 16 years, and before that was on the Minneapolis City Council for 4 years. So he's been an elected official in our area now for 20 years. He's currently chair of the County Ways and Means Committee, and before that committee comes many of the problems in terms of dollars and cents that face us in terms of children's care. Commissioner Derus, as Hennepin County provides a variety of services to family, including child care, health care, foster care, group residence for chemically dependent youth. These services are often contracted out to other appropriate facilities in the community. I wonder if you could describe some of the programs and the county's role both in funding them and in monitoring them.
Well, we spend millions and millions of dollars on programs for kids, Bob, as I know you know. $13.5 million in child care funds. Let's see, we have about 1,700 children in out-of-home placement. About 164.8 people that are doing $8,333,000 for family therapy, adoption service, various forms of counseling to families, abused children, neglected children. In addition, we have 181 staff in our child protection program to try to protect kids from violence. Those services cost about $9 million. Our emergency shelter budget to provide immediate placement for children who don't have parental caretaker is about $6.6 million, as a matter of fact. And when a child must be out of the home for an extended period of time for whatever reasons, in our 1990 budget, this is 1990, that's $31,679,000, if you can believe that. Treatment for services to family when a child is still living in the parent's home, and we have a day treatment budget there of $2.8 million. We're focusing very much on early childhood development to provide much of the programming for children as possible to make them ready for school by age 6. And we have a yearly childhood budget in that program of $5,050,000. We also have 4 staff and contracted budget of $143,000 for mentally retarded parents to try to teach them how to raise their children, help them raise their children. We have $142,000 to provide parenting education to women who have recently been released from prison, for instance. They have special problems. We have, I'm almost through here, but it's you have to almost read through this litany of dollars and cents and that we're spending on this subject. We have $417,000 to provide for services in the home to families of color to enable them to adequately care for their children as an alternative of moving the children due to parental neglect. We provide $251,000 to fund the Minneapolis Crisis Nursery to provide respite shelter for children of parents who identify themselves in danger of abusing their own children. We provide $693,000 to community nonprofit agencies to work with young people having problems in school or involved in minor delinquencies and referred by police agencies. I could go on, but it's millions and millions of dollars we spend annually, millions and millions of dollars we spend annually on programs for children. Then, of course, the county provides all kinds of dollars for children who are in different categories: mental illness, mentally retarded. We mentioned a program specifically for mentally retarded children, but many children who are mentally retarded are in a whole different category. Mental illness, as I said, runaway children, halfway houses for runaway children. Through General Hospital, we provide medical care for children of the indigent. That's millions and millions of dollars. So what's really happened here, I think a listener might look in and say, my gosh, those are all tax dollars. They're all programs that people are paying for. What's happening? And what I think is happening to our society is that the county has rushed in to fill a void created rather recently by the breakup of the joint family system as we've come to know it through millenniums. Some pop culture anthropologists, Margaret Mead, Ashley Montague, kind of people were reading 25, 30 years ago, talked about this joint family system that they say it took us 1,000,000 years to learn, to come out of the trees, walk upright, and have grandparents, uncles and aunts and cousins and all the kinds of things perhaps you and I were fortunate enough to grow up with, which meant you had not only parental supervision, love and care, but you had grandparents and uncles and aunts and cousins. And what used to happen, of course, if you were very young and you lost your parents, your family, your extended family took over. If you were ill and elderly, or if you were ill and young, you had many, many people, a support system. But now through social and geographic mobility and the phenomenon of single-parent families and the fact that people move around the country so much and families are disjointed for whatever reasons, mostly economic, people don't have that kind of support system. Somewhere they have to get that kind of support system, and so the government is charged now with being, economically anyway, the joint family. It's a very poor substitute, but at least it's something. At least county units of government are charged by the state and federal government with addressing these social maladies, and that's our job.
One of the concerns that people have, I think, is that why does the county bear this burden rather than the city? What role does the state play? How does this get funded? And I think for the average person that reads the newspaper or listens to the newscast, they hear these contradictory comments from various elected officials, who should be paying for what? I know it's a very complicated subject, but in terms of the children's services programs particularly, how do the state and county relate to this funding and program problem?
Well, it really can be explained, at least rather simply, in that there are essentially only 4 levels of government in the United States, of elected government. There's federal, state, county, and municipal. Almost all other forms of government that you have are spin-offs of those. Your own library board, for instance, a very powerful organization, but they're kind of a spin-off of county government. The Metropolitan Council, very powerful, prominent government, but really a spin-off of state government. So there's 4 levels of government by elective office: county, city, state, and federal. And each one of those levels of government is charged by the people with doing different things. The city level of government most recently, and I used to be the city councilman, and this has changed a great deal rather recently. City level of government is charged by the state level of government with zoning and planning, safety groups, fire and police, the future of the city, keeping it clean, keeping it productive, keeping tax base going, that sort of thing, which we call hardware services in governmental jargonese. The county unit of government has received a whole new charge, and that charge is this vast area called human services, euphemism for welfare, amongst other things. And so the state and federal government send millions of dollars through the pipeline to the county. And they say, here, you administer AFDC, Aid to Families with Dependent Children. You administer food stamps. You administer drug treatment programs. And the federal government, of course, and the state government is in Minnesota is charged with writing the law, administering the huge departments like Department of Transportation, Human Services, and things like that. But the administrative arm of state government is now county government, 87 counties in the state of Minnesota. We run the programs that the state and federal government write laws to address the social maladies about. So normally you'd think, well, that's fine. The county governments, now we're going to get to the who pays for it deal. Okay. The state sends money to do some of these things. The federal government sends money down to the county to do some of these things. But in many instances, they have passed laws to try to help children, to try to help the indigent, to try to help homeless people. They pass laws that say counties must do this, counties must do that, but they don't send any money.
Mm-hmm.
So they charge us, for instance, with doing something about public intoxication. You know, most people would agree that was a good law that they passed, that to be publicly intoxicated was not a crime, it's an illness, and we should treat it that way. So we have detoxification centers, but they don't send any money. So we're spending millions and millions of dollars on detoxification because the state didn't send enough money to provide for the detoxification centers. We just closed the one at Southdale Fairview. And the one downtown is costing us millions and millions of dollars. It's an instance where they pass laws and they don't spend the money to do anything about it. The same thing's true in so many of these categories for children. They don't send the money down, but they pass a law. So where do we get the money? We get the money the only place we can get the money, and that's from raising the taxes on the homes and businesses in Hennepin County. That's why taxes are, one of the reasons why taxes are so high in Hennepin County.
I know one of your concerns over the years, and particularly over the recent few years, has been the problem of child abuse. And how do it's apparently an increasing social phenomena, or at least it's being reported more than it ever was.
Yes.
And in the process, the county is asked to become an intervener. But who pays for this process? How does the process work? If I think my neighbor is a child abuser, maybe you could give the viewers an idea of what happens. I mean, who do I call? What happens when I call them? Who pays for this? You know, how does the child get help?
How does the child get help? Well, most people call 911, the police department or something like that. It's not a bad place to start. But actually, probably a more reasonable place to start is the County Child Protection Unit. And 348-7574, I think is the number there. That's administration, and they'll channel you there. The problem is horrendous. Now, whether it's a bigger problem than it used to be or not, whether we always certainly had child abuse with us. But I really think that child abuse is on a vast upswing, and the reason why I think it is this phenomena of the break of the joint family, the breakup of the joint family, where we have boyfriends or girlfriends or people who are not related as surrogate parents, you know, who don't have maybe the interest in children that their biological parents always have. Some of them have more interest in the biological, I mean good in a positive fashion, so it's not always true, but I'm just saying we don't have the support system there for children we used to have. Children are left exposed literally a lot more, in harm's way a lot more, because they don't have all the attention and all of the frame of reference setting that kids used to grow up with. It just isn't possible for a lot of children. So they get in danger a lot more. And so I think there is a lot more child abuse, molestation of children, that sort of thing I think happens more than it used to. So we have this vast bureaucracy called child protection. Some of the finest people I know in public service are in the child protection unit. It is the most thankless job possible. It's dangerous. It's depressing. It's a horrible way to have to make your living. Yet these people are devoted to doing it, to try to protect these children. And they're probably amongst the most maligned group you can possibly imagine. They have I-team reports on them. They are blamed by the media for the death of children. Where was child protection? Well, child protection can't be in somebody's apartment when somebody is beating a child. You know, they simply, not only that, but most of our child protection workers are women. You know, you send a 130-pound woman out to some man's house where this great big guy, she's confronting this great, with no policeman, with no law to really protect her, and she says, you better quit doing this to your child, and I want to know what you're doing and everything. And she's armed with nothing but logic. She's armed with nothing but her own will. And then she's criticized when she gets back. That's a very difficult job. And I have a great deal of admiration for our people in our child protection unit who have the courage, the ability to do this and to get up every morning and go back to work. I mean, if you get on the elevator, and Bob, I know you've done this down at the Hennepin County Government Center, and you see some little kid with a little bundle of clothes and a teddy bear holding the hand of somebody you know is not their parent, you pretty well know what's going on. You know, that child's been removed from the home, and what you have there is a child care worker who has to spend part of the day with that little kid, and then surrender that kid to strangers, to a foster parent or something. Do that day after day sometime. I wish some of the people who criticize these people could go walk a mile in their shoes.
Do these workers get caught too in between a parent or a foster parent or separated parents over a child, and they must get caught in some kind of personal crossfire there too?
All the time, and it's emotionally draining. It can either make a very callous person out of you, where you shut your feelings off so you just can't get involved emotionally at all with anything, or you can be over emotional and get into it too much so you lose your objectivity. And for some reason, most of these people are able to walk the line in the middle, to keep their composure, and to place themselves in a position emotionally where they can help the child. Very difficult.
Society, in effect, has placed the responsibility for this on the county. Does the county then fund it through county property tax, or through state funds, or a combination, or federal funds, or donations?
Depends on the program.
Okay.
And these programs are run through a combination of federal, state, and local property tax monies. And what's happened lately is the portion provided by local property tax has greatly increased. And if somebody is out there today saying, what's the reason for that? I refuse to pay for that. Then they should read the media or watch television and see what happens to the county if a child does die. And the kind of charges that are leveled by the court system and lawyers and all kinds of other people, and who's sued if that child isn't protected. I think if people could see what happens to kids, there isn't a person who is watching this program who wouldn't want that child protected and wouldn't spend what's necessary to do so.
To change the subject a little, some concerns are expressed, and I know that there have been newspaper articles about it and television reports, and you've had to speak to this on several occasions. People express concern about families moving into Minnesota, into Hennepin County in particular, because we have such good programs for families and for children. And people say, are they doing this to take advantage of our system? And are we just funding, in effect, strangers? How do you answer those comments?
I think there's some of that. And I guess I would like to take care of our own poverty, our own poor, our own homeless, and leave it at that, because we can't afford to be a welfare giver to the world, or say nothing of the Midwest. But there are no laws that prohibit that sort of thing. You cannot stop somebody from getting on a bus from East St. Louis or Gary or Detroit or Chicago or any place else they're coming from, Des Moines, and coming up here.
Baudette, Minnesota?
Yeah, Baudette, Minnesota, or wherever they're coming from. You cannot stop people from doing that. It's the law. If I want to get in my car with my family tomorrow and move to Albuquerque, I have the right to do that. They have the same right to come here. Well, then you say, well, yeah, they have a right to come here, but we don't have to give them any money. Well, that's not true either, because the state and the federal government have laws that say when you meet certain residency requirements, then we have to give you welfare, we have to give you general assistance, we have to give you medical assistance if you need it. We have to do these things for you under the law, whether we like it or not. That is our job, and we take an oath of office to obey the laws written by the state and federal government. So we try as best we can to make sure that these people aren't coming here collecting a check and leaving and using us as a way station, and then they're going to the next town and doing the same. But I want to tell you that there are people doing that. And we have a fraud unit who tries to investigate that. They're under person. We don't have enough fraud unit people. But even when we do, it's very, very hard to enforce those. Now you stop and, what do you do with somebody who's homeless, for instance? Obviously they don't have a home. They don't have an address. They don't have a place to sleep that night. And that might be a woman with 4 children, by the way. And do you say, since you have no address, we'll give you no help? Well, it's exactly the kind of person you have to help.
Yeah.
You got to shut a bunch of little kids out in the night. But the less sympathetic sort of individual, of course, is a single male who looks like he could go to work, and you're giving him a handout, as it were, or money to go get drunk on, or whatever it is that they're going to do with it. That's very hard. But the law states what we can and cannot do in these instances. We certainly also have more homeless people than we used to, many of whom have never been on public assistance, many of whom are middle-class people who are simply, for whatever reasons, we have this economic revolution going on, out of home, out of work.
Or by choice have just decided to walk away from responsibilities and live their own life.
A lot of those.
Yeah.
I guess I have very little sympathy for those people. I think if they make that choice, then they should provide for themselves.
Children's mental health today is apparently under increasing pressures and stress, partly because of the family breakups, partly because of society, I think in general, is putting pressures on kids at a much younger age for all sorts of things. Could you describe some of the county's programs that deal with children's mental health? Because I know the county really has a problem here.
Yeah, we do. We do have programs specifically for children in the mental health area, but we have programs for mental health that apply to all age groups. And we have shelters. We have, for instance, for kids who are in trouble away from home, we have a St. Joseph shelter, which is not ours but belongs to Catholic Charities, and we pay them on a per-person placement sort of situation. We have mental health counseling through General Hospital, Pilot City, and our clinical agencies. We have all kinds of residential, semi-residential, outpatient treatment centers for kids in trouble. We have shelters for runaway kids, many of whom are experiencing emotional problems. We place kids all over the state in homes for emotionally disturbed children. I spent 4 years at the St. Cloud Children's Home as a cottage counselor, and most of our referrals were Hennepin County referrals. So we have, we spend millions and millions of dollars on that every year. And, but the problem doesn't go away, and it seems to be exacerbating itself. It seems to be growing. It's such a problem. But there's also a lot of good things going on with kids. You know, I'm reminded of a quote that said, the kids today, their hair is too long, they won't wear shoes, they wear dirty clothing, and they're extremely abusive to their parents. I think that was Socrates.
Yeah.
No. But so kids are every bit as good as they used to be, and sometimes maybe better. They're brighter, I think, overall. They're exposed to more information, which is one of the things you address, which makes them have more choices. And some of those choices are pretty sophisticated choices, unfortunately. They're not ready for those. They don't have the supervision they used to have. They don't have the limit setting they used to have. And I think kids need that. I think kids want that. But I don't think that's available. And I think that's one. I think also, and this is gets into, I guess, a personal philosophy. I go to a lot of schools to speak or talk and watch what's going on.
Right.
And it seems to me that if it's you shouldn't blame place. It doesn't get us anywhere. But a lot of the problem with children and what's going on in our school systems, what's going on in our systems, our agencies, our governmental bureaucracies, has to do with we as parents and our lack of responsibility. You know, the fact that we don't take responsibility for our own children. We send them to a school system and we expect the school to educate them, to teach them how to eat, to teach them how to dress, to teach them manners. A teacher is supposed to accomplish all this minus any kind of real authority. Any kind of real authority. And then we as a society, if that teacher is out of line at all in any way, will sue them. And so what you have is a school system that's kind of hunkered down, afraid to really assert itself. You have parents who have assumed less responsibility. You have the phenomena of children raising children in our school system. We now have nurseries in our inner city schools for the students who have children, in our high school system, in our junior high systems. So this is a brave new world that kids are looking at. And I think if we're looking for the enemy, it's us, the parents, and our lack of responsibility taking and our lack of assessing where we are with our children. And I think we want to blame the school, we want to blame the county, we want to blame media, we want to blame books or whatever. And I think it's like Pogo said when he went into the swamp and came out and he said, "We have met the enemy and it is us."
You've commented in a couple instances in your experience at St. Cloud too, and you mentioned the St. Joseph's Home. The county is contracting apparently more and more of the social service programs out to other organizations, other agencies, other groups. And are they doing this because it's apparently less expensive? There's a more direct relationship with the user that way? Can you monitor it easier or better? At one time, I think all social services seemed to be provided by, quote, bureaucrats, and I don't use that term in a negative way. It was just
because it includes you and I.
Yeah, that's right. It was just, you know, you're a paid government employee, and those are the people who provided the agencies. Now there seems to be a huge proliferation of semi-governmental or just plain non-profit, and I use that term in quotes.
Some of it is profit
providers.
now.
Yeah.
Some of these agencies are profit-making organizations. It doesn't make them bad. Well, what's happened is there's been a reaction on the part of the community. Part of the community could care less about the government and what it's doing. They think they can do better, and they set up their own models, and I think that's a good thing, because it gives a competition for governmental agencies and a way to measure their own ability to address these problems. So I think a dual system and a multi-system sort of approach to this problem and its solving is a very good one. Therefore, contract the purchase of services to do halfway housework, to do treatment for emotionally disturbed children is very good. I, however, think that the professional people who work for Hennepin County are A1. Now, I can't say that about all counties everywhere, I don't know. But I can tell you this, that we set very stringent requirements. These people have to have a certain educational level. These people have to have a certain amount of experience. And we're very choosy about who we hire, and therefore you have to pay them. You have to pay them properly if you want to get good people doing these things. So I have a lot of faith in our professional staff with the county. But I think it's also good, you can get a lot done by people out there in private not-for-profit or private for-profit agencies who get a lot of volunteer time in, who get a lot of community involvement, who have the ability to reach into the community and tap resources that the government cannot. Church, fraternal groups, Kiwanis, Optimist, the sort of help that a lot of these agencies get, United Way help. Very good way to reach out and redouble our efforts. So I think it's all good. Unfortunately, it isn't enough. But it is a billion dollar phenomena. I wouldn't call it an industry in our society. And it's growing, unfortunately, every day because the problem's growing. You know, it gets back to the fact that we have this problem and we don't seem to address the why. You know, we're dealing with the symptoms, but we're not dealing with why it's happening to us. And it's painful to examine why. You know, what are we doing as a society and that's causing this? And I don't think that a lot of us want to look at that for some reason.
Well, I want to thank you, Commissioner. Today we've been listening to Commissioner John Derus discuss some of the county's services to children and the problems in our society today that children become the victims of. The public library is really a preventive social agency, and by virtue of the literacy programs and a collection containing thousands of books, magazines, pamphlets, we deal with the issues of daily living that people confront, both as families and individuals. And I'd like to thank you again, Commissioner, for joining us on this program.
Well, as one De La Salle High School graduate to another, I'm glad to see you're doing so well.
Thank you, John.
Thank you to Commissioner John Derus and to Robert Rohlf. And thank you for joining us on All About Kids. Please tune in again.
This has been a presentation of Hennepin County Library in conjunction with the Twin Cities Metropolitan Library Service Agency. We thank you for watching, and we hope you visit your public library often.